another episode of the Becoming a First-Rate Duelist podcast. We are a podcast now, because before we were an interview series, but now we're a podcast because we have to get on the podcast train. And I'm going to figure out how to put this crap on Spotify, because I'm talking to all these pro players that give us great advice, and so it needs to be shared with the world. And guess who we have today? We have a fan favorite that everyone's been asking for. His name is Pack something. Pamornsut? Is that right?
That's pretty close. Yeah, Pamornsut. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome. What language is that?
Thai. My family's from Thailand.
Oh, okay, cool. Do you speak Thai?
Yeah. I do. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. How do you say it's time to duel in Thai?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
That would be like the first thing I would learn if I was gonna. You know what? I'm gonna go ask my parents how to say it's time to duel in Urdu, the language of Pakistan, and see what's up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you I have no idea how to say it in Thai. That's for sure.
Well, that's okay. I'll find out for you, and then yeah. So chat. I have some questions prepared for Pack, but feel free to ask questions at any point. And if I like your question, I will incorporate it. And if I don't, that's your problem, not mine. So let's get going. All right. So how long have you been playing Yugioh?
I started in like late July. A little bit after. I forgot when Nationals was, but July of like 2019 is when I started playing the game. Not just like competitively, just in general.
Oh, okay. So what was your first deck then?
Time. I played Salamangreats. I watched like a video from Simo, and he said that like it was a really good competitive budget deck. So I bought 3 Structure, and I bought Veilers and DD Crows from eBay, and I spent $40 and I went 0-4 my first locals. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you like had like a natural knack for it, or if you kind of struggled at the beginning and got better. Like what happened there?
I think it was just like I just didn't know what my opponent's cards did, so I spent more time reading their cards, and I also didn't know what my cards did either. So it like just was twofold. Oh yeah, it was rough.
That sounds like me on a daily basis, if I'm gonna be honest. Yeah. So like, what made you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, cause like most people like played when they were a kid, and then they just like got back into it. So like, what's your story?
Originally I entered the game to actually like, it was a side hustle to like buy and sell cards to make money on the side. I thought that was like really neat. I've watched the anime before, so I was like, oh, if I can like make some side money like buying, selling cards, that sounds like really fun. And so like a friend of mine who was already established in the Yu-Gi-Oh space kind of like brought me on, and it kind of encouraged me to like, you know, maybe give it a shot. I decided that I needed to learn how to play the game in order to like buy and sell efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what, let's give learning Yu-Gi-Oh a try, because like how can I buy and sell cards if I don't even know what are good and bad investments, right?
Yeah.
So I did some research, and that research led me to start going to my first locals, and after that I became more obsessed with like playing the game than like trying to like vend it.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. Yeah, I think in order to vend, you have to know the cards type of a thing. So was that?
Yeah, exactly.
Was it like hard to like learn the game? Like, how was that experience for you?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty hard. Like I remember I had to like watch a lot of videos to like understand what was happening. The biggest thing for me that was confusing was link summoning. Obviously, like that mechanic is super easy to like understand nowadays, but when I was first like trying to like get into the game, I like didn't really understand the concept of being able to like just do that. Like it just seemed so like unfair to me. And of course, like Pendulum. Those are like the 2 mechanics I didn't really understand. But those same mechanics are like kind of like, I like challenges. So like I took Sal as my first deck because it was like a link mechanic. It was like something I was not really familiar with. And then my second deck ever was Pendulum, which I thought was like, in order to get better at the game, I thought I had to like play decks that were more challenging and harder to play. So I just like decided to like tackle those things head on. And I think like, that was just kind of like my mentality with a lot of things. So that definitely helped a lot.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, I made myself learn Drytron even though I didn't think I could. And it's definitely made me a lot better at the game. So I feel that entirely. I still don't know what pendulums do, though. I'm supposed to dual Triff at some point, and I've just been putting it off because I don't want to learn how pendulums work, because I just don't care, and so I'm gonna have to face him at some point. So yeah. Oh man, we have chat fighting over pendulums right now. Let's see. So, you know, you've been playing for a relatively short amount of time. Like, the other people I've had on this podcast, like Zara Khan and Cody and Elise and Raphael, have been playing for like 10 years or something like that. But, I mean, you haven't been playing that long, and you have quite a long list of accomplishments. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure, yeah. So I won the last YCS remote duel for NA. My first event ever, which was like the one of like somewhat of a big size, was I guess the PPG like nationals. I remember I qualified, like I went to the event without an invite, and I qualified the day before in order to play.
Oh my.
But yeah. I don't know if I lagged out. Sorry about that.
You did.
But sorry, I'll restart. Yeah. So basically, I won the last remote duel YCS for NA, and then my other quote-unquote win that I would say that jump-started me into like becoming more known, even though I wasn't really known immediately after, but it was like the Altergeist deck at the PPG Nationals. I remember like when I flew down to Florida to play at that event, I actually didn't have my invite, so I kind of went with my friend just to get experience. Oh. So I got my invite last minute through a qualifier the day before the tournament, because we flew in like a day early.
Oh man.
And yeah, the guy that I played actually, I think in the finals of like the Winamat or like the invite thing, the last chance qualifier, he was actually the person who gave me tips on my deck that actually helped me like win the entire tournament, which is Justin Singh.
Oh wow. I know
so
Justin.
Yeah, it was like Justin's a really nice guy, and so like it was just like crazy series of fortunate events, and like I think 3 or 4 of the sorry, my internet is really bad. My internet is really bad right now. Sorry about that.
It's cool.
But yeah, and then I've topped a couple like regionals. I've topped like a couple LCSs. So yeah, but I was one that was like of somewhat big size was the YCS.
Yeah, that's nuts. I just want to say, like, personally, like, getting to know you and watching your journey has been really inspiring. Like, chat, you guys have heard me talk about freaking balling on a budget and how that gave me hope that, like, oh, you don't have to have, like, $1,000 deck to do well. And that gave me the confidence to really work on my broke-ass Shadal deck, as I like to call it. And then that gave me the kind of courage to move on to Drytron. And it's just been really inspiring because I feel like you work really hard and, like, you're also really, really nice. And so it's really nice when Yu-Gi-Oh players aren't douchebags, and so I very appreciate that aspect of you. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. No, it means a lot. Yeah, it's been crazy. Like, the journey here has been absolutely insane. I definitely did not expect to, like, get this far, but, I mean, here we are.
Yeah, and I feel like Pac is like the people's champion, you know? Like, everyone wanted him to win, except there was this troll in chat that just kept saying bad things about you, but everyone just made fun of him. Like, we wanted you to win because that would show that, like, you know, hard work and consistency, like, really do pay off, and you can make all these big accomplishments. So, yeah, whenever you won, I, like, cried. I was so happy. I was like, oh my god, Pac won! I was so happy. So,
no, I appreciate that. No, it means a lot. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I guess now I'll get into some user questions. Actually, no, I thought of a different question, so I'm going to ask that instead. So, like, how did you learn the game as quickly as you did? Because, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a huge learning curve. So, like, how did you figure that out?
I just became, like, obsessed in, like, a weird way. Like, I just enjoyed watching Yu-Gi-Oh content, and I knew that I wanted to get better, so I just kept watching a lot of videos, and I watched a lot of people play, and I like mimic what they were doing that I thought were like really, really good. So I think those were the biggest things for me. I also watched a lot of like feature matches, so like new or old ones. I remember when I was starting, I watched like nationals. I've watched like just every feature match. It didn't matter what it was, like 2018, 2017, 2016. I was watching all of them. Mm-hmm. And like just watching how people played and like what the better players were doing. And like like their thought process and like how they played their cards and all that good stuff. Even though like I didn't understand the cards at the time, like I googled them, I like looked them up on DB, and after that, because I was just like fascinated. So it was like I think I just like was like I didn't want to like just get better, and like I didn't think like if I watch YouTube videos I was gonna get good. I just like kept watching and playing the game to a point where I just put myself in a position where I just played so much where I just like had to get good if I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because of like the sheer amount of like time I put into it. But I think like it's like the biggest thing I would say for people is like you gotta like play. I think a lot of people try to like focus on like one thing or another thing, but the biggest thing for me that helped me improve the most was just playing a lot. And then obviously like learning from them. You know, you're like a lot of people are quick to say I bricked or like I did this or this happened, but if you watch like any of my games, whether they're on stream or like anything, I always like try to like even like the games I win, I always analyze what I did wrong, or what I did right, and then there comes a point where after a while, like all this thought process, you know, becomes a lot quicker because you get to these actualizations like more like much faster in like actual matches and stuff like that. So that's like I would say like the biggest thing. I just watched a lot, I played a lot. And I just looked at what the better players were doing. So.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have anyone who was helping you throughout this process, or were you kind of learning on your own?
I would say when I first started for the first like probably like year, a lot of it was like I had to like do it by myself. But as like I guess became much more like accustomed with the community, I started like just talking to more people and becoming friends with like a lot of the people that are like really, really good, and just hanging out and like talking to them. I wasn't really kind of like asking them for advice, but I just like watch how they played and how they think. And I think that was like what really helped me. Like I wasn't, you know, becoming friends with people just to like get to like just so I can like learn from them. I just became friends with them just because they were like really cool. But then as a byproduct, I also got to hang out with them when they were also like playing and all that good stuff. And that like taught me so much about like the game. And it like also, but the biggest thing that I think that really helps is you gotta like not have an ego when it comes to a lot of things. I think a lot of people try to like prove something when they don't really need to. Like and I never like had that mindset where I felt like I needed to prove myself to like others or like make myself feel superior or any sort of that kind of stuff. So like I just like took that time like or that energy to just learn as much as I could. And I think that's like the biggest difference that I've noticed when I like talk with other players who are also trying to get good, but it seems like they're like really stubborn. And it's just like having like that open-mindedness is it's really like the best way. I mean, besides just even Yu-Gi-Oh itself too.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about open-mindedness kind of thing, because everyone can learn stuff from the game. Would you say that, like, you know, like, most things about the game at this point, or would you say you still have lots to learn?
I feel like it's a combination of like both, right? Like, because I play the format so much, like, there's not really a lot that like takes me by surprise. But that's only because like I play like almost every single day, right? Like whether that's on stream, off stream, in my spare time. So, you know, that's like, so in that instance, like there's not really much, but you know, it's a lot of it is just learning as you go. So for example, like if a ruling thing comes up about a card, I think a lot of people like generally memorize like the interaction between the two cards instead of like the underlying reason behind like that ruling or why cards work that way. So a good example is like if you give someone like an example of DD Crow versus Ben 10, like they'll know what happens of DD Crow versus Ben 10, but then they'll forget that same interaction with like two different cards. Like for example, like Fiend Griefing versus like Ben 10, they might like not remember or like they might not know what happens. Just like things like that. I find like really interesting that like people like would remember like interactions, but they won't try to like know the underlying reason behind X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's like, rather than just memorize the interactions, you have to understand the theory and the concepts behind it. And, like, that's kind of the difference between a lot of newer players and later players type of a thing. So, yeah, I think that's great advice for sure. Let's see. If you could give any advice to someone who wants to get better at the game, like, what would you say? I
would say just like, I mean, it sounds like dumb, but I would say just play more. but like play with like purpose, right? So like if your goal is to like get better, then you shouldn't focus on like winning or losing. And like a lot of people might be like, well, Pat, that makes no sense. Like, you know, you should like play to win, right? But I think the biggest distinction is when you play to like improve instead of like playing to win. The biggest difference is that you like the biggest difference is that like regardless of the outcome of like the match, there's like a takeaway that you get from it that, you know, helps you become better. Whether that's critically analyzing a board in a complex game state, making the right decisions under like a clock, like a pressure or something along those lines. There's a lot of like there's a lot of points where like sometimes you would win, but it's like not deserved. But a lot of people just like kind of like think of it as like a zero-sum game where it's either you win or you lose. But in reality, when you're trying to get better, like that's not really the goal. You don't really look at it that black and white, but rather like, you know, what you could have controlled within, you know, your circumstance and like the cards you drew and all that good stuff. Like that should be like the primary focus. I think you see too often that like players would just blame so many other factors than like, you know, themselves. And that's like one of the things that is like really important to like just improve. So yeah, that's probably my biggest advice. Just play to like improve then, rather than just focus on like winning or losing, because that will come later down the line. But the most important thing right now is like you to, you know, like get better, right?
Yeah, and I think that's good advice, like especially for me, because I think I'm becoming focused on winning versus losing because I've been having more success. Like I won like 4 locals last month or something like that and topped every other one. And I got second place in this 1K tourney. And so like I can see myself, like last night I didn't win. I got 4th place and I was just like dejected. And it's like, I don't think that's really healthy. I think I liked it better when I was like having fun and it was about learning versus about winning. So I appreciate those words because I'm going down a dark path, Pack. I'm becoming what I hate. Oh.
Yeah, no, it's understandable, right? Like it makes sense. Like it's just like the nature of like how people like interact and stuff like that. But yeah. Definitely like that mindset switch helps like a lot.
Yeah, and I know in the quarterfinals, the semifinals of that 1K tourney, like I really should have lost because that Invoke player was like a lot better than me. He just for some reason thought that Zeus was 2800 defense, so he made certain plays, and he thought I would be dumb enough to Zeus the Ecclesia when he was summoning Floor, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. And so he ended up throwing, but like legitimately I wasn't playing that great, like, and he should have won. That sort of thing. So like rather I didn't want to like be like haha I won. I was just like, dude, like you should have won. And we talked about his plays and his alternate like play lines that he could have done in order to win, and that was actually like a really like wholesome good experience like to have with your opponent, you know, to like break down the game and see what you could have done differently. And then I took the $300 and ran away. So yeah, that's what I did. So yeah. And by the way, chat, if you have any sort of questions, just kind of drop them in chat. We have a question from Twitter. So what is your mentality for building a combo deck from the ground up? Like, do you set up an end board and try to reverse engineer it? Or do you do test hands and see where you end up? Like, how do you figure that out?
I guess probably the best example I can give was when Virtual first came out. I remember like I was only testing by myself, and I remember like I was one of like everyone, like there was a couple others who like had testing groups that all played Virtual as well. But I remember like I thought that was a really cool experience because I was able to like pinpoint something that everyone else was also looking at, but I did it without anyone else. So I thought that was like really unique because I was having the same thoughts that everyone else had, but and like they were also playing, and that's why like I think there was one LCS where Virtual took like half of like top cut because no one expected it, and the people who like played it it was just like leagues above. Mm-hmm. And like I remember when I was like trying to like playtest that deck, I just kind of like, I mean, building a combo deck from the ground up is like really hard, but I think that's like really fun. All I tried to do was just do like test hands, try to figure out combos, see how many ways I can play through hand traps, what are cards to put in that helps like the end board, all that good stuff. I mean, there's no like one real answer to say it. The way I deck build is like, at least for that combo deck specifically, I just literally did test hands and saw like kind of just tried to see what like were the limits of the deck. And I also like just winged it. Like I just looked at the cards and tried to wing it and like see what I could like come up with. You'll be surprised like how many like cards or combos you figure out in the heat of the moment. So I know like even like yesterday I was playing against like Tombox. We were both testing like the new archetype, the Sword Soul archetype, and there was like a line I figured out that like was super neat. Like I found an interaction with like Valor and Boxia where I made Boxia to shuffle back my opponent's cards, pop itself to bring back a Valor, and then use a Valor and a level 6 to make a Yazi, which is like the deck typically doesn't have access to the archetype. So making a level 7 Yazi pops a card and then summons a worm from the deck, and then that worm monster like gets more effects. And it was like, you know, just being able to like wing it and like see these different lines and like these different paths is like the coolest part about combo decks that aren't like that linear. So like I don't know, it's a hard question, right? Because that's like a question that's more dedicated to like sitting down, and that can be like a whole 1 hour topic. But I would just say is like, I don't know, I just kind of wing it. I guess that's probably the answer. I wing it a lot. I winged it. I see what works, I see what doesn't, and I just keep on working with it and tinkering with. It's like yeah, there's like no real answer to that, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's probably a really complicated process, but I think you gave a couple of tips for how we could do that. I know I've had that experience with Drytron. Like, I posted it on Twitter. Like, I had a hand. It was like 2 Gammas, Diviner, a Dawn of the Herald, and like one other card. And like, it was full combo, and like I figured out one version of it, and I was able to make a board. But then I took a picture and I put it on Twitter just to see like, okay, what other lines are there? And like it was so fascinating how every person came up with a different line and different end board. And like it really opened my eyes to like, you know, what you can do, and I just found it to be really fascinating. So I think you know, looking at a hand, thinking about it, and like consulting with other people is a great way as well.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a question in the chat. What tips would you give to other content creators, duelists who want to get to the same level as you in terms of skill and knowledge?
Another good tip I would say is like play as many decks as possible. I think if you see like my resume of like, you know, like events I did well in, there's very few events that I played the same deck over and over again. And that's not to say like, you know, you play, you know, all these different decks and you're like mediocre at them. Like try as many decks as possible, but then play them to like their fullest, right? And like become like really like, you know, good with them. Just because they're, you know, like I feel like the coolest part about Yu-Gi-Oh is when you sit across from someone, you have no idea what they're playing, and when they do, you know, like draw their cards on like or play a card, you have no idea what that does. Like that's such a big disadvantage, and I like capitalizing on that because I know exactly what that feels like when I like first started playing the game and I sat down with my solid deck and I was like reading Thunder Dragon cards, right? Yeah. So if you imagine that same feeling where like you play a complete like a deck that like no one expects or know how like what the cards do, like you have such an innate advantage. And that's why like I feel like a lot of the time I do really well is because I get to capitalize on the fact that people don't respect like certain rogue decks. Like I remember the first extravaganza, or one of the extravaganzas I topped, I played Prank Kids, like a deck that a lot of people like didn't really know what they did or like what they were trying to accomplish. And like just that alone gave me so much advantage. Or like I would play LC, like I think the first LCS for Virtual was legal, I played it. The first LCS that Drytron was legal, I played it. It was just like basically that the advantage of having something that you're, you know, other people like haven't played test or like they haven't really looked into because they're either like too lazy, or they don't want to, or they just feel as if like it's a rogue deck, so why bother? Like that, like yeah, that mentality like really sets like a lot of people behind. So I would say like just be as open-minded as possible, like try as many decks as possible, try all those strategies, you know, and you'll just like learn something about all these different types of like decks, and you learn how to like play games like very differently. Like the way you play like Shaddoll decks or like, and the way you play like, for example, like an Infernoble deck are completely different. And like the way you can like you manage your cards with like Prank Kids or like the way you play Tri Brigades, or they're all very unique in their own way. And so like you also get to experience like other facets of like Yu-Gi-Oh, which I thought is like really cool too. Like I've never been one to like stick to a deck because I get pretty bored pretty easily. Like I feel like after a while, like there's only so many times you can normal summon a prank kit, or so many times you can activate fractal, or so many times you can activate like alpha before eventually it's just it's quite repetitive. I think I would say after you play a deck so much, like if you really put in the time, you can honestly master that deck pretty fast. Because I've played so many decks, like for me, like the time it takes for me to like master a deck is like it's a lot quicker now. Just because like I've developed so much like game sense and like card pool knowledge just from like playing so many different decks and like learning and then watching so many different like past formats. But the idea is that like as you play more and more, like it just widens our card pool so that you don't lose to these like decks ever, and you know what to stop. And I think that's like really neat. Like even like for example, like Dragon Link recently got hit on the last ban list, and the way that Dragon Link currently plays in today's format is so vastly different from how it was played before, and so like the choke points are slightly different. Like the way you stop the deck is slightly different, but then knowing that, you know, like a lot of people actually don't know that. So like it's just like these are like the type of things that they're like small advantages or small disadvantages that you can get. But these are like things that are in your control, right? Like you can like choose to play another deck. You can choose to like learn about other things. It's like controllable. So like the things that you could control within this game, which is like pretty variant sometimes, I think you do your best to control them. Just so that it gives you the highest percentage, the highest opportunities to like do well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So like, I think your advice about learning multiple decks is good. I actually just got prank kits because I feel okay with Drytron, and I don't feel comfortable with the prank kids matchup, so I thought the best way to learn how to counter it is to learn the deck itself type of a thing. But like, how do you learn a new deck? Like, do you just go on YouTube and watch combo videos, or like, what's the best way to learn a deck?
I usually just go right into the fire. So like, I remember like the first time I bought Virtual, I actually bought it from Jesse, and he sold me his entire like Virtual core in French. I had no idea what the cards did, but I still went to locals. That like I played a remote duel locals that day, and I remember looking up what my cards did, but which was probably not a great idea. But the idea is like just go into the fire, just like try it out, like wing it. Like it's, you know, locals is pretty low stakes. I think like there's not really, like you don't have to feel bad or feel good about like winning or losing locals. Like it's nice, but at the end of the day, it's just like a nice testing ground, right? It's like a way for you to like practice. So like just take these decks and just try them out. See what works, see what's not working. Acknowledge like you're making mistakes along the way, and then like see what you could do next time. I remember like 2 days ago I was playing like Earth Machines at locals, and I was catching my misplays like right away because like I wanted to play as appropriate as possible from a time perspective. Like I didn't want to slow play my opponent. Because like not knowing your own deck shouldn't be an excuse to play slow, because that's on you, right? That's controllable. Yeah. But the idea is like I play it as reasonable as possible, but at the same time, you know, I wasn't processing the right decisions with that deck, mainly because I wasn't comfortable with it yet. But making those mistakes allowed me to figure out what were the best decisions in that heat of the moment, right? And what like lines that I didn't see that I saw after. And so, but that just takes like going right into it. And just like trying to figure it out. Another thing you can do is just like watch what other players do with the same deck that you're interested in. So like, for example, like if you're interested in playing like X deck and you see like there's a really good player who's playing that same deck, watch how they play their hand out. Like watch how they sequence their cards, why they activate a certain card, and try to like find a reason why they're doing it. Because maybe you won't know, because obviously they're just playing. Like they're not gonna tell you why they do what they do, but try to like come up with the reason that explains the way they play, because that's how like you really learn, right? So like if you see someone like normal summon, they have like 2 prank kids in their hand. It's like a Fansies and like a Roxy's, right? Like what do they normal summon first? Like do they go for the Fansies or the Roxy's? It seems like it doesn't really matter, but like it's just like these decision makings that try to justify like if he normal summoned the Roxy's first, like you would have to like banish a card. Maybe he didn't want to banish it first, and like maybe normal summoning the Roxy's made more sense. Like just those type of like thought process. Not really saying one is rather the other, but coming to like that understanding, I think is like really interesting. And then you start to get that game sense and like that understanding yourself, and then you start making those like you start having those decisions pop it in your head as you play. And that's how you like kind of, I don't know, start improving and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, that's fair. And like chat, if you're wondering like where you can watch replays and stuff, there's this dude named DB Grinder who like posts replays of high rated DB matches, and he'll like tell you what the matchup is like in the title. And every day I do that. Like I'll have my lunch and I'll just watch the matches, and that's been really, really, really helpful in terms of like learning other decks and learning my own and stuff like that. So that's an option. Do you know Austin?
I don't like know him that well, but yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yep.
All right.
Like I don't know him personally. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I mean. For sure. Yeah. Let's see. Have you ever been interested in learning or playing an FTK deck?
Not really. I like interacting with my opponents. I mean, there's like some. I think like there's an argument to be made about like the way combo decks are being played right now, because they're basically pseudo FTK decks. Like Drytron's basically an FTK deck. If you think about it, if the combo resolves, you probably lost. But like in that same essence, it's the same thing with like prank kids. If like a prank kid loops resolves, you probably lost. If like a Tri Brigade loop resolves, any decks where their loop resolves, like the game's probably pretty much over. So I don't know. Like Yu-Gi-Oh like has evolved so fast that like that's why hand traps are so important, because like all these decks when they resolve their combo, it's like so hard to come back from the advantage you get from it. Puts you too far ahead. So
yeah.
I think it's interesting when it's like, I know it's not like FTK in the sense like where they kill you like on the turn 1, but Yu-Gi-Oh nowadays like you barely get to see that turn 3, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I was just about to be like, no, I'd never play an FTK deck, and then you were like, Drytron's basically an FTK deck. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Maybe I am on the dark side as well, but yeah, like, I think that's, like, a struggle, because in Drytron, I don't really play hand traps. I don't really count Orange Light as a hand trap type of a thing, so it's just a matter of, like, can I just break or play through their interruptions type of a thing, and yeah, like, sometimes it's just not possible. I just have to scoop and move on to the next game. Okay, so how do you improve managing your resources on the longer duels?
I mean, that's tough, right? Because it's like, it's not an easy question to answer, but what I usually try to look for is, especially if because the other part of that is like, especially if you're in a losing position, it's like, how do you like try to come back and stuff? And the way you like try to do that is like, you look for like room for your opponent to like misplay. Because I think in a world where everyone plays perfect, I don't think anyone would consistently top YCSs or anyone would consistently top any event. But the reason why the best players are consistently topping, it's because people make mistakes, and that's like the truth of it. A lot of people make a lot of misplays. Like everyone's prone to it. It's just that the better players their misplays, they make them less more than the average person. So essentially, like when you're in losing positions, you should generally try to put your opponent in a position to like misplay. And what I mean by that is like sometimes like when you set a card, like for example, you're playing a trap deck and you're setting a card, they might overthink what that back row is, so they play like too much into it and they try to remove it. Sometimes your opponent like gets really flustered by like potential hand traps you may have, and they might make the wrong play into a hand trap or something along those lines. So essentially like psyching your opponent out. Obviously like don't be weird about it, but I think like just keeping like a nice poker face and like making your opponent like think you have stuff when you don't. Obviously like without saying it or like doing anything like that kind of stuff. Even like verbal cues, that kind of stuff really helps. And then in terms of like, improving your resources on like longer duels, I mean that there's not a lot of game in Yu-Gi-Oh where resource management matters. I would say like playing stuff like 2011 format or playing 2014 format is like a great way to like learn those type of things. You see me playing a lot of retro formats because I find that like the skill set in those formats are so vastly different from the skill set you develop in modern Yu-Gi-Oh. But there's like a lot to learn from both those types of ways to play. I remember like when I was playing like an Elich deck, or when I played Shadalls, like they were very heavy or like super intensive resource management decks, and like the games were really long because you couldn't really kill your opponent. I like love those type of games because as more turns pass back and forth, there's more opportunities for your opponent to like misplay, as I was mentioning before. They play bad into the back row, like they didn't up their cards straight, like so that gives you like a lot of opportunities to like win with a deck that like is inherently weaker. which is why I was able to like feel like I found success with like trap shadows. It was because like people just played worse into trap cards, and so like making like more optimal ways to like play their hand out. So I don't know. That's probably my long-winded answers to like both.
Okay, thank you. We do have a question about what are competitive decks that aren't tier 1, except Try, Pranks, VW, and Drytron.
I think Dragon Link is really up there. I think Ignister is a cool option. I think like a trap Eldritch deck with a lot of trap cards is like really good. I think Sky Striker is like also like a really fun deck that I feel like are competitive. Like there's a lot of competitive decks that can do well in the meta, and like they might not be like quote unquote tier 1, but they're decks that like you can do well with.
Yeah, definitely. Sky Striker is my bane. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool decks out there.
Okay, so Drytron. We're gonna talk a little bit about Drytron because everyone I talk to, I ask them this question: what build is better, pre-prep, Drytron, or no pre-prep?
I mean, it depends on the format. It's like there's no like one right or wrong answer.
Okay, how about
but I would
now?
say like I would say like right now, I think the pre-prep version is better, only because like the amount of hand traps that people are playing, the pre-prep loses to Ash Blossom. That's like the only card it really loses to in Droll, but no one main decks Droll, and like if you bait an Ash with the pre-prep, then that means Alpha gets to resolve, getting you Ben 10 access, and you probably win the game off that. If pre-prep resolves, then you pretty much like it's really hard for you to lose. Yeah, there are like Garnets. Like the only one is real. The real one is only Dawn, so there's only like one Garnet in like the archetype playing that engine. I mean, it's a card that like auto forces the negate. I just think the card is really good. I think like you set it out going second to like matchups that's really bad in, like for example like Tri Brigade, for instance. But for the most part, it's like pretty good.
And Dragoon or no Dragoon?
Probably Dragoon. There's too many hand traps in the format. Like you need a backup plan. So like yeah, you're playing all these Garnets, but at the same time, like you gotta build your deck. If you're playing a deck like Drytron and your goal is to win every time you go first, and you can't consistently do that because of how many hand traps are in the format, then your deck isn't accomplishing its goal, right? So you basically want to play as many cards as possible that increases the chance that if you win that dice roll and you go first, you like need to win, right? Like that's the advantage of Drytron, where if you win the dice roll, you win game 1 immediately, and you have like basically an advantage in terms of temple swing. So like you're forced to lose game 2 and like auto win like game 3, but the only way you can do that is if you can build your deck to win. With the amount of hand traps in the format, sometimes even if you go first with Drytron, sometimes you don't even win. And then there comes a point where it's like, if you're not consistently winning going first with decks like Drytron, then why are you playing it? You know what I mean? Like you could have played like any other deck, like any other deck, right? Because the thing is, Drytron is very weak going second. So in that essence, right, if it's very weak going second, you're making the concession to like not always win going second, because you don't have a lot of defensive cards, and you need to guarantee that when you do go first, you need to win as much as possible. And that's why like I like don't want to play Drytron in formats like this. It's because I don't always win the dice roll, and even if I do win the dice roll, I don't know if I'm gonna always win. But I definitely think that the pre-prep and the Dragoon is like the best way to like put me in a position to win, even if I do go first and get hand trapped a lot. But I find myself gravitating nowadays to playing more decks that have more defensive cards, just because I find that like when you don't have like defensive cards and your opponent just plays however, like they're able to make a lot of misplays with the way they sequence their hand, or like they do their combo, and you just sit there looking at it, but there's nothing you can do. And like decks like Drytron, like for example, allows you to like beat players that are better than you in terms of technical play, only like just because like the deck does so much and you don't have a hand trap to stop it if you play like for example a mirror. So like I find that like decks that are more mid-range with like more defensive cards and tech cards lets you basically punish your opponent when they misplay or play badly with their like the way they sequence when they're playing a combo deck, and you have room to like basically outplay them, and I think that's like the most important part about like trying to take a deck that not only tops but also like wins, because I think you can top with Drytron, but I think it's really hard to win unless you get like really lucky. But that's just the nature of like the way the deck functions, right? Like you have like almost 0 cards that help you going second. Whereas like other decks nowadays have like 12 to 15 defensive cards. That makes it so that, you know, when they lose the dice roll, there's still a chance they take that game 1. And taking game 1s are like super like huge momentum swings, like I mentioned before. They're like they change the tides like completely. Your opponent like might be more nervous when they lose game 1, especially if it's like a, you know, high stakes. They play a little bit worse. They might like, you know, fumble a little bit more. And these are all like things that like, you know, you get to capitalize on when you win that game 1. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I was playing against this Drytron player's game 3, and he was playing really freaking badly, and I didn't draw any of my 12 side cards to, like, punish him for it. And so, like, if I even had just, like, 1 hand trap, I could have just, like, ended his turn type of a thing. But, like, if you don't draw it, what are you going to do? So I definitely do feel that for sure. So how much time do you put into testing decks when you're not streaming?
I mean, the thing is, like, I think the thing is testing has like a bad connotation around it almost. Like it makes it the way it's like framed nowadays makes it seem like it's a chore. Like it makes it seem like you're doing homework. But I mean, for me, like I just get excited to play new decks. So I just play when I can. So like if I have like a lunch break and I want to try out a new Ignister deck that I built, I just take it into raid and I just play it. Like I think the concept of like testing is it's literally anytime you play the game that they're all testing in a way. It's like like I said, it's I don't know. I feel like it becomes like synonymous almost, and people make it sound like, oh, they're doing like God's work or some sort when they're like testing or whatever. But in reality, it's just whenever you play the game, that's testing. It's nothing more than that. It's when you play the game and you try to like figure out how to make better plays, how to how to make better plays, how to like change card choices. Are the card choices you make in your deck good? Like that's like testing, and like you can do that anytime. Like so I mean for me it's just whenever I have time, to be honest. Like lunch break every hour or so, 2 hours. But I guess like answer that question just all the time, right? Like realistically it's whenever I'm available. When I'm on stream I'm testing. When I'm like not on stream I'm testing. Like these are all like all those sessions, all those games you play, they're all testing sessions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, like, one thing that's kind of rough is that, like, and, like, I mean this in the most humble way, but, like, I feel like locals isn't really a challenge. Like, I shouldn't be winning, like, most of the locals I go to because I'm an average player. It just means that the people I'm playing against aren't really at, like, that high of a level, or they don't play decks that are as good, or maybe I win dice rolls, I don't freaking know. And so like the big challenge for me is that like I need to play against better players in order to really grow, because when I play against someone that's worse than me, like I'm not growing. I can play sloppily and still win, and that's not good. But the problem is I don't know where to find these better players, and I'm stuck in low ranked DB right now, and I don't know how to get out. And so do you have any kind of advice on how I can find like more competitive players?
I don't think it's like necessarily like you play against better players, you just also become better. I think even if you don't get to play against better players, like if you just I don't know, like just look I don't know, if you can find some of these people's like DB account and just watch them play on DB, like I think that helps. Just watching them play I think helps more than you just playing against them in a way, because you get to learn how they think. That's like I think more important than actually just playing against them. And even playing against like people who aren't as good as you, you always have to like play really well, I think, regardless, because there's like too many variables and variants in the game that like at least in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, that it like you could play so bad but still win. So like you can never like really afford to play bad. So those are my things. I mean, yeah, I mean like definitely if you play someone better, I think most of the time people get like too nervous anyways, and they like overthink things. Like they think I have hand traps I don't even have, like, or they think these back rows or cards like don't even exist. You know what I mean? And the thing is like I don't know. I feel like I learn more, and it just depends on how you are as like a learner. I learn more when I watch like the better players play, and I try to think in their shoes like what the right plays are, why they make the plays they do. and that kind of stuff. Like I feel like that's what helped me the most. And when I do play against like a really good player, they're basically like an average player, but the only thing is they don't make this like the same amount of misplays that an average players do. So you just gotta play just as well. Like I don't know, like I don't think you ever have to be like, oh, like I'm playing against like someone who's like well known and you play worse. I see that happens like way too much, and I don't know. I think that's so like unfortunate because it's like you could just treat the other person you're playing against as just like anyone else. Like I don't know. I feel like it's I don't know. I feel like it's too like a lot of people psych themselves out more than anything else. But yeah, I don't know. Like that's definitely like something that I found like really interesting. I remember that when I went to my first PPG, I played people like Kamal, people like Ruben who I didn't know at the time they were like well-known players because I was so new to the game, but I just played them as if they were just another buddy of mine or they were just like another person I met, right? And like just playing with that mindset made it so much easier to like not worry about, oh, this guy's like so good, he has like 20 tops, like you know what I mean? Like yeah, just don't let yourself be the reason why you lose. And that's like the biggest thing, to be honest. And even if you play against a really good player, like people make mistakes. I've seen some of the best players in the game make like misplays. Like that stuff happens, right? Like because at the end of the day, we're all like learning, right? We're all like students of the game in some way. So yeah, that's my biggest thing on it. Just watch how they play. Like I honestly, feature matches are the way to go. Like if you get any opportunities to like watch like really good players play, or just like whether that's on YouTube, on Twitch, on like any sort of platform, like gameplay is so important. Like seeing how they sequence, like a good example would be like if you just watch like when Christian streams every blue moon, just watch him how he like plays his hands out, like especially when he's on DB. He's probably one of like the best players to like learn from because like the way he thinks about the game and the way he like maneuvers through like his hands are like really unique. Like I'm pretty lucky because I'm like friends with a lot of like the really good players and I'm in like a Discord with them and we hang out. But like I remember like when I was in like a Discord call and you know one of the things we do is like they would just play a rated game on DB and they would share their screen for us. So like we would see his hand and we would just discuss like take like so long to like think about, yo, should I normal summon this or this? Should I start off with this? Like should I sequence it this way? Right? And like yeah, the way these people think are like so cool. Obviously like I'm hearing it like in first person, but if you get the opportunity to like either watch them like in person or like watch them through Twitch or like anything like that or like YouTube, it's just like really cool because then you also start picking up some of these habits that they do like that are really good, and then you also get to like improve that way. So
yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And like that's why like as part of this podcast, I know we're not dueling today, but I want to play against like everyone I interview because I don't want to get psyched out. Like the first time I played Cody, I didn't actually know he was like the national champion and stuff. I just knew he was good. And, like, I beat him with my broke-ass Shadal deck, and I was, like, cool. And then afterwards, people, like, told me about his, like, titles and stuff like that. And then the next time I played him, I was so freaking nervous, and I lost. And, I just didn't want to, like, face someone in a YCS and lose just because I was nervous that they were really good. So that's why I played against Jesse Cotton, and I beat him. I played against Raph, and I beat him. And I played against Cody and stuff. So, yeah, I think it's really important for people to recognize that, you know, they're just another person. They're not like...
Yeah, everyone's beatable, right? Like, just because you're like a champion, like YCS, UDS, nationals, regardless, it doesn't mean you're unbeatable, right? Like, if they were unbeatable, I think they would have even more credentials than that. You know what I mean? So, like, everyone's beatable. Like, and that's, like, really the biggest thing. I mean, it's just understanding whether that loss was controllable or not within the realms of like how you played and stuff, like that's truly what makes like I feel like or break like a really good player. Like essentially like knowing whether or not they could have done something different or just truly accepting that there was nothing else they could have done. They take the loss gracefully and it is what it is, right? Like Yugioh has variance, there's that stuff is going to happen. But in order to be consistent at the game and to consistently do well like that, that is like through hours of like practice and constantly like not letting variance get to you. And like there's so many like factors that like you can lose once, but at the end of the day it's about winning what counts, like like doing what matters, like, and like having that like right like mindset. Like I know so many like I know there's like a local like an OTS store that has like so many like insane players, right? And they would just play, and then it's like it's really good practice, you like beat like all these like nice players, but the biggest test is when you like can go to like a long event, play it really well throughout back to back matches, right? Like that endurance, that like mental fortitude, that's like what really like separates like consistent players from people who like do well every now and then. At least like that's what I've noticed in like my experience.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that was like, I guess the first time I experienced that was at that New York tournament that we went to at Gamer's Choice. Everything
Right.
playing Yu-Gi-Oh for like 12 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the first day was really rough, but the second day was a lot better. And yeah.
Yeah, I remember I started like coaching, and like I told like one of my students, I was like, I told them like, yo, there's an extravaganza this weekend. Even if you have your invite, just play it anyways. Play it anyways, because that 8 rounds, there's like not a lot of opportunities to play that many rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh back to back in a quote unquote semi-competitive pressured feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like putting yourself in those positions to like, like play those tournaments, like, and then of course, I also told him like, hey, like take track of all your matches, like what you played against, what do you feel like you're losing to, what card choices you're playing in your main deck that really helped you win, and then pretend that like at the end of like the tournament that you're doing a deck profile regardless of how you did, and explain your card choices, like did this make sense, that like were you playing this card because you had an attachment to it, or did you play it because it was actually a good card to play, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like you see so many people when they deck build, they always put in like a certain card in their deck because this is like that's like their bias towards a card. Like I think I remember like when I was playing the Pure Trap LH deck, right? Like I didn't let my bias like guide the way like that I was deck building it. Like I remember I didn't play a L land in my LH deck, and people were looking at me like I was crazy, but it actually made sense not to play it, right? Even though like a lot of people just like turn off their brain and just like just put in the card because it's part of the engine, or something like that, right? It's like really just defining like the rules that are quote unquote standard, because sometimes they don't always make the most sense, or like they're not always like the right or best choice for an event or anything like that.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
also something really important.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to put Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon in my Drytron deck, but Elise won't let me, so that's just never gonna happen. But if I did, that would be dope. I would probably lose, like, way more often. Okay, let's see. So we have a question from a content creator. What is your current workflow schedule for creating content and working full-time? Like, basically, they are having trouble balancing themselves and all their responsibilities.
Like I don't really have a workflow, I'll be honest. I kind of just do things on the fly. It's just like kind of like my personality, to be honest. Like I work like usually either 9 to 5. Like today was like really late. It just depends. Like sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's not. And then in my free time, I just stream because I just enjoy it. So like the thing with like burnout and all that stuff is like you only really get burnt out when you start forcing yourself to do certain things. And I find that when people like force themselves to like do it, or like they treat it as a job or any sort of like that kind of stuff, that's when they really get burnt out. For me, like I just enjoy streaming. I just enjoy playing the game. I think it's like pretty evident of that. So like, it's never a chore. Like I do it because I enjoy it. Right? There's no way I stream like 100 hours a week, or like not 100 hours a week, 100 hours a month of Yu-Gi-Oh, if I don't like it. Right? Like it just doesn't make sense. Like and when you're streaming too, it's like really hard to like fake it, because your camera's always on, and you're always like hanging out, and people can like tell, like they know when you're like forcing yourself to stream, or they know when you're like forcing yourself to do this or this. So at the end of the day, like my biggest advice for everyone who's like content creator or etc., like just do it because you have to have an innate love or like innate passion for like a lot of these things, because if you don't, and it becomes like a chore, that's when you burn out. That's when you're just like damn, I gotta like stream today again. It's like you know, and in reality it really isn't like that. It's like, you know, you do it because you want to, and then if you start seeing more success and maybe you like make some money from it, and like that can become like another motivator, if that's like your motivator, like that's fine. But at the end of the day, like you need to have like some sort of like passion about it, or else it's gonna be pretty obvious that people can easily catch on. Because I see that like thing a lot with like new creators, that they're just like forcing themselves to stream and they like magically hope that like something just happens, but it like doesn't work that way. So that's like my takeaway from like the year and a half, or however long. How long has it been? I guess it's been like a year and like 3 months, I think, or 4 months since I started streaming.
Oh, nice.
And like doing content. And yeah, like the only way like you can go like consistently this long is if you like it, right? So that's like my take on that kind of stuff. Like I don't have a workflow. I just do it when I have time, and because I like it. That's all. That's my thing on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My 1 year is coming up next month, I think. And
Nice.
I'm getting really close
Nice.
to partner. I have like 73 average out of 75, so I'm gonna make you stay
That's a
here
huge
as
milestone.
long.
Yeah.
That'd be sick. I'm hoping I get a partner by the end of the year. That would be just so dope, but
Yeah.
we'll see what's up.
Right.
Yeah, so hint, hint, everyone, you are not allowed to leave. You must stay here until my average goes up.
Yep.
Has your perspective of the game changed when you topped the LCS compared to now?
No, not really. I mean, like the only thing I notice more, like as I get better, is I notice I notice like misplays more often than not. Like I just see mistakes more often than not. But I'm still the same person. I just have credentials now. And I guess if people would even call it that, like it's just, that's like the only difference. Like nothing's really changed. Like so I don't know. Like I'm still the same person. I don't think like you win a YCS and you just grow like 10 inches, or like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still the same. So for me, like nothing's changed. It's just, I mean, I've just gotten better at the game. So nothing's changed in terms of like who I am as a person, but as a duelist, I've definitely improved. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We have another question. Sleeper strategies in this format? Question mark.
The format's pretty defined right now. It's like hard to say. Like I don't know. I'm trying out like a trap deck right now, like an LH deck with like just 35 trap cards.
Oh my. That sounds.
Seems fun. Not really sure if there's a sleeper format. Like I think the thing with like sleeper strategies, it assumes that there are like good options to play. But unfortunately, like right now in the format, there's like not really that much that hasn't already been played. But for me, I think like playing this like 30 trap card LH deck looks really fun. I think like a lot of the decks in the meta right now, like Tri Brigade and Prank Kid, loses pretty badly to trap cards. And same thing with Virtual World. Same thing, like Drytron is like probably the worst matchup, but in general, like there's a lot of the meta decks right now, like if you set 5, I don't know what they can do. Like Sherry only hits 1. So.
Okay. Oh, I had a question. What was my question? Let's see. Oh yeah. Are there any new archetypes that are coming out in the next couple of sets that you think are going to be really good?
Yeah, Burst Destiny has like 4 archetypes that are insane. That's why I'm waiting for that set. It's gonna be the new Rise of the Duelist, the way I look at it. Been like hyping the set up for a minute now, but I think it's justified. You have Flinderies, you have the Sword Soul archetype, you have Live Twins being viable again with the new Link 4. You have these are all cards coming out of Burst of Destiny. You have Heroes making a resurgence with the new Destiny Hero Fusion monster, and the new main monsters. Like there's so many like archetypes that are now viable again, and they get a huge power spike. From like a power card perspective, in like card quality. So like it's just so many decks out there that now is going to be viable and like an option to like play, which I think is like pretty cool. You have the new like spell card that literally searches any monster in the game called like Small World or something like that.
Oh, that's coming out. That's coming out in the next set. When does that set come out?
November. It comes out in November.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's just so many. It's like quite ridiculous. It's nice because like I said, there comes a point in time where you can only normal summon Prank Kid, activate Fractal, activate Alpha, like so many times before the format gets pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think since the YCS, I felt like the format basically ended, and now we're just waiting on a Yu-Gi-Oh drought is happening, because product got delayed. So we have like Damo is just not a real Yu-Gi-Oh set. Like I think there was one card out of there that was like somewhat playable. So it just seems as if like right now it's like a test of our patience while we wait for like the new ban list, the new sets from Burst, the new Megatins to come out, because people then more people will have access to TTT, and like some people might just play in their main deck even if it's not good just because they now have access to it. So like you see like a lot of shifts in like the meta and like the overall community that we just have to wait and see that happen. So
Okay, awesome. By the way, my Streamlabs has frozen, so I am not sure. Chat, are you guys still with me? Oh, it just unfroze. Okay, well, chat,
okay,
let me know if you can see this. Okay, what deck should I play after Drytron?
I would say like maybe try a mid-range deck. I think a Soul Sword is gonna be like really nice to try.
Okay, Soul Sword?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Soul Sword, Zhang, Jian, whatever, however you pronounce the deck.
I should play Numeron Karibo. Oh, what was that question you wanted me to ask? What do you think of the new, like, Karibo Dark Magician card?
Yeah, so I have no idea, actually.
Oh, okay. I don't either, so guess you guys won't know his opinion on that then. Okay, so we're about, Magic Karibo. Okay, so we're about, close to time. So if you have any last minute questions, but is there anything that else you want to say, or any questions you have for me or anything like that?
No, nothing else really. I think like I think the way that I approach the game right now is like I obviously like I feel like I'm doing really well. Like on like all like on multiple fronts, you know, like Twitch is like doing well, YouTube is nice and growing, but the thing that I want to like tell people is never feel like content with where you're at. And obviously like you should be happy with like all the accomplishments you do and like all that good stuff, but I think like for me the mentality I kind of have right now with like content creating and like even playing the game is that like I want to get to the next step. And you know, even though like I came off like this win, like it doesn't mean that things like stop here. So you know, as you like start winning your first locals or you start winning your first regionals or all that good stuff, like don't let that just be the end of it. You know, like try to find like new ways if you're a content creator to innovate the space, try to come up with like new sick content. You know, don't think there's a certain point where like, you know, you can do the day-to-day stuff. There's like it's like there's easy content you can do, and there's like a lot of easy things that you can do. But if you really want to grow and take your like whether your channel or like that stuff to the next level, to the next step, you're gonna have to like start doing something like really dope, super, you know, something unique. And a lot of that has like come with like not be content at where you're at, essentially, in a way. And then in terms of like playing wise, like I said, just, you know, when you start doing really well, don't just take that for granted. You know, you still have to like hone your craft. You still gotta like practice. You still gotta like try to learn. You're not impervious to like making misplays or like making the wrong moves just because you are like, you know, you have like X accomplishment or anything like that, you know. So like just don't be like I would say like too content, essentially. And it sounds like a weird pessimistic thing, but it's like, you know, you gotta be happy, but you also gotta realize like what's the next step, etc. And that's like my last thing I would say on like this kind of stuff.
Okay, definitely.
And yeah, but I enjoyed the podcast. I thought it was really dope. Just to like talk. I like discussion type content. So
yeah, anytime if you want to do a part 2, hit me up. Chat, can we get some emotes for chat, please? Can we get some thank yous for Pack? I really appreciate you taking the time. Like I feel like you've really helped me grow a lot, and you know, you inspire me, as I already told you, type of a thing. And so I'm looking forward to getting even better, and I'm going to do the extravaganza this weekend. I'm going to see if I can maybe top. Last extravaganza, I slept through the first round or two, so hopefully I don't do that this time. Hopefully, you know, I can maybe at least top. And I did get my invite for the freaking qualifiers, but I want to be on Yu-Gi-Oh TV. I want to freaking be on that Konami live stream. I really do, and I'm gonna work on it. So
yeah, that's dope. Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, good luck with that. Yeah.
And if I get on Yu-Gi-Oh TV and they interview me, what is something I should say in your honor?
Nah, nothing. You don't have to say nothing.
Oh, come on. It's kind of like how Farfa, like, wanted you to say something about him, but then you didn't.
I didn't know what to say. There's, like, no opportunity. What am I going to say? I'm a Farfa viewer out of the blue?
Yeah, that would have been hilarious. But, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll think of something funny to say later, then.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, alright. Well, I'll let you go. People listening, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment. And we're going to get this on Spotify. We're going to make this a podcast, and it's going to be sick. And we have some guests coming up soon. So, yeah. Thank you, Pac.
Awesome. Yep, no worries.
Okay, take care. Bye.